Hi, welcome to the world of kite fishing. Fishing with kites has been around for hundreds of years, but the recent increase in popularity of fishing with kites in New Zealand is due to the improved technology of the kites. The state-of-the-art kites that we make today are capable of being tacked up to 85 degrees off the wind, so no more do you need the wind directly offshore. You can fish with the wind straight up the beach, straight down the beach, or any offshore angle. Also, there's a vast range of fishing kites available, and they'll suit any lines right through from the smallest rods and reels right up to big 100 kg lines towing out 25 hooks. It's also possible to jig, troll, fish over foul, and do any type of fishing that you could do out of a boat with the aid of a kite.
There are two basic methods of deploying fishing gear with kites, and they encompass a huge range of possible gear sizes. The most popular, productive and the simplest rig to use is the big kite-powered bottom longline system. The longline rig is, however, limited in its application to snag-free, clear types of seabed. The most versatile of all the kite rigs and the most fun are the dropper rigs.
This is the largest dropper rig that we make. Dropper rigs come into their own on the west coast. That's because the mainline is supported clear of the water. It doesn't matter how strong the rip is or how high the surf is, this rig will get out over it. The other factor that's extremely important to remember with the dropper rig is that it's built progressively sacrificial. With the mainline out of the water right up to the kite, that's the strongest part of the line. Then a drop line drops down and it tows out any type of hook system that you prefer on the bottom. Can easily be adapted for fishing over reefs and trolling, but the way we're using it here is as a sand dropper rig. The 65 kg dropper rig comes complete with a trace holder and carry case. This device allows for the floats and the kites to be safely stored inside the tube. All of the hooks are stored safely away on the inside of the tube so that you're not going to snag anything, and the traces are connected to the clips at the other end. The first thing we have to do before we actually put the line out and fish is to clip the kite onto the end of the main line.
One of the safety features of Paul's kites is the tawa dowel used as the spreader. If the kite should go into the water and all the other safety features fail, the dowel will break, allowing the kite to be retrieved easily by the keel. In light winds, we recommend an 8mm dowel, and in winds above 20 knots, a 10mm dowel. As long as there is any wind and the kite is not over-tacked, the kites should remain airborne.
And attached to the keel, we've got a safety trace. The second clip back on the safety trace clips to there, and the recovery line goes over the wing. Should the kite go in the water, this safety trace will break, and then the kite will be recovered edge on without any resistance in the water by the recovery line. As an added precaution, it's advisable to clip the floats over that clip. The floats give added protection should the kite go in the water. It keeps the kite on the surface during retrieval and prevents it being scuffed or damaged on the bottom. We simply release the ratchet and let the kite go up in the air. About 30 feet under the kite is the skyhook shock cord. If you have insufficient pull, this is connect the skyhook to. Further down the shock cord, there's another 3 loops, and that's for attaching the tail rope on the skyhook. This is the skyhook. The spar is retained at the bottom end, and you simply pop the wooden dowel into the T at the top, and then we connect the T to the top 2 loops on the shock cord. The spar should be facing away from you, and effectively what we're trying to do here is to make the kite line travel directly through the T on the skyhook. You then grab the tail rope and connect the tail rope to the appropriate eye on the shock cord. It's critical to have the skyhook setting correct. If it's too low, it actually pulls the kite line down and it makes it very difficult to tack. And if it's too high, the skyhook just becomes totally ineffective. When the skyhook tail rope is set correctly, the skyhook is just pushing the kite line forward, and that's improving your tack angle and giving very stable flight. For today, the correct connection is this one here. That's because we don't have the wind blowing directly offshore, so we are going to have to tack the kites. If the wind was directly offshore and we wanted maximum pull, we would actually be setting it on this loop. You'll notice that on the end of the tail rope, between the cord and the clip, there's a little trace in here. That's a safety trace, similar to the safety trace that we've got on the Nighthawk kite. Should the kite go in the water, that will break, and then you will have to retie the trace and reassess which is the correct loop if you haven't tied the trace the same length. Okay, now that we've got the kites flying correctly in the conditions that we've got today, we now need to look at if we've got a fishable angle or not. And we find that we need about a 30-degree tack. So what we need to do is get the tack rope, attach a screwed up shopping bag to the end of it, and then we just simply clip it to the wingtip on the kite. When you clip it onto the wingtip on the side you want the kite to go to. Applying the tack rope to the side tips the kite over and brings it around into the wind, and hopefully we should wind up fishing at about this angle.
That doesn't look right. It's way over tacked. We'll have to take about a third of the plastic bag off. That's much better. It's got 60 to 70 degrees of tack on it now, and just as well, because the wind has shifted and is blowing straight down the beach. It's amazing just how much tack can be achieved with a top quality Delta kite and a skyhook. If the line is allowed to run freely off the reel, the kites lose a bit of tack. But as soon as the strain comes back onto the reel, the kites will quickly head back up to the desired position. Most people would be pretty impressed so far. The wind almost straight down the beach, and we've achieved a fishable angle. Very few wind-driven systems are capable of anything near this. In reality, though, what we've achieved so far is simple. You see, we're fishing around the top end of Muriwai Beach, inside the mouth of the Kaipara Harbour, and this harbour entrance is notorious for its strong currents and treacherous bar. Yes, the tide is coming in, and it's a big one. Looks to be doing at least 4 or 5 knots in the same direction as the wind. This is as difficult as it gets. We've got to beat both a severe rip and a really difficult wind angle if we're going to have fish for dinner tonight. Now that we have the kites flying correctly, we wait for the shock cord and we're ready to attach the terminal tackle.
The next thing that we do on a dropper rig is to connect the drop line. The length of the drop line is what gives our main line its altitude clear of the water. I generally make them about 50 arm spans long. Now this is a 65 kg dropper rig that we're using here, and because we don't actually know what's out in the ocean and we don't want to risk losing the kite, I've made the drop line out of 56 kg. So if we snag the line, if we hook something that's too big to land, then we just lose a few hooks. Now that we've got the drop line connected to the main line, we take the ratchet off and let both lines run up together and wait until the drop line comes off the handspool. And here comes the bottle cord. At this point, just put the ratchet back on the reel. We're now ready to put the sand bottle on. The purpose of the bottle is to actually prevent the kite lifting the main line and the hooks out of the water or even off the bottom. We just simply put sand in the bottle until we've got sufficient sand that it counteracts the lift of the kite. A perfectly weighted bottle should actually sit on the surface of the water and never lift down. That should be enough sand, but it's impossible to tell until you've actually run it down the beach and tested it. If it's too light, you just simply put another couple of handfuls in. If it's too heavy, tip some out. There's 3 loops on the shock cord. You just simply take the long loop, pass it through the handle, over the bottom of the bottle, and you're tightly secured.
Once the bottle is correctly weighted, we simply release the ratchet on the reel and allow the 30-metre leader section to run off the hand spool.
We've now got the bottle 30 metres away and we're coming into the hook section. That allows for the line to drop from the surface to the bottom. Now just before the hook section we've actually got a piece of safety trace in here. The 56 kg has got a piece of 48 kg tied in here. Again, it's a safety feature. If we snag on anything, we want to lose the absolute minimum of gear.
We're now at the three-way swivel at the beginning of the hook section. This is where we clip the main weight on. You'll see the weights already have a clip, and this is clipped through the empty eye on the three-way swivel. A small weight is fine for average rip conditions, and if too much lead is put on, it may cause the gear to become bogged. Today we've got 15 to 20 knots of wind, and the night hook is fitted, so we'll put a 2.5 pound puka bomb on the front to keep the hooks on the bottom in the savage rip.
Over the years I've spent my lifetime involved in fishing. I've done both commercial longlining and a phenomenal amount of kite fishing. And I've found that the type of hook that you use has a major impact on how much fish you catch. Just recently, Wasabi have released these kite and longline hooks, and they're an excellent hook. They're chemically sharpened, and the hookup rate on them is just incredible. One of the critical things with any hook that you're going to use on long lines or for any type of kite fishing is that you need to pick a hook where the point recurves and actually points below the eye of the hook. The way these hooks work is that the fish will swallow the hook, and then as it tries to swim away or tear the bait off, the hook will get caught in the corner of its mouth. Now, as long as the hook is correctly tied, no matter how much the fish will shake its head, it cannot shake the hook out because the hook keeps trying to form a circle. Half of the reason for the success of these hooks is in the shape and the design of the hooks. The other half is in tying them correctly so that the trace acts as a spring. A lot of people are curious as to how we tie our hooks on. It's quite simple really. You just pass the line up through the bottom of the hook, half an inch or so, pinch it and hold it down on the shank, and then do 8 or 9 turns. And you just pass the other end back through the top of the eye. Give it a little nip up, and that's it, tied perfectly.
It's now time to bait the hooks. Because of the huge distances kite fishers tow their baits, it's very important to use fresh, firm bait such as trevally or mullet. If fresh bait is unavailable in your area, salted baits or large frozen squid are good alternatives. Our favourite is scaled mullet, cut into strips about 20 mils wide and 50 to 70 mils long. We only put the hook through once at one end of the bait. If the hook is placed in the centre of the bait, it will rotate like a helicopter and can spin the trace around the crimped hook section. A properly deployed bait should swim straight.
Okay, we're now into the hook section, and we've got crimps every 2 arm spans right down the hook section. The clips that we use are actually Sea Harvester running clips. They run up and down freely between the crimps, and they also allow the main line to rotate.